This is the state of the nation. Rifa Muwanga. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Sally. Good evening and welcome to the State of the Nation. My name is Henry Sally and I'm delighted to serve you this evening. For those of you who are in Kampala, good morning. For those of you who are in North America, good evening. To those of you who are in Europe. As always, we engage in another important discussion. And today's discussion is unlike any we have made before, because today it's not simply about Uganda. It is about understanding politics itself. But let me ask this question. Who governs Uganda? Who governs Uganda? Most people would answer the government. But what if that answer is incomplete? What if the greatest misunderstanding in Ugandan politics is that we use words state and government interchangeably? But they're not the same. Governments come and go. In reality, the state should survive every election. It should survive every coup, every president, every prime minister, and every government. The state, on the other hand, consists of institutions: the constitution, the judiciary, the parliament, the police, the army, and the central bank. Government merely occupies those institutions for a period of time. Which brings us to today's disturbing question. Barely a day after the High Court granted Muwanga Kivumbi, the Deputy Vice President of Uganda, for the National Unity Platform, barely a day after the High Court granted him bail, reports emerged that he was again apprehended at a roadblock while traveling home from his Friday prayers in Butambala. Now, whether one agrees with Muwanga's politics is beside the point. The bigger constitutional question here is what happens when the coercive power of the state appears to override the authority of the courts. Then we ask ourselves, who ultimately holds power? Is it the judge, the minister? Is it the police, the military, or someone else? And that someone else is very important because we need to figure out who they are. But today we are not discussing personalities. We are discussing the architecture of power. Because unless Ugandans understand the difference between the state and the government, we may continue debating politics while misunderstanding whether power or where power actually resides. In studio with me today are accomplished scholars, legal minds, and consultants. My colleague Stella Nyaz is here already. We are still waiting for all the other folks that often engage with us. Leonard Egesa will be joining us shortly, and Counsel Aaron Kiza will also be joining us shortly. I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you who takes time to join us in these important discussions, because without you listening and asking questions and commenting on what we are discussing, there's really no discussion. So this is the assembly. It's an accessible assembly for you and everyone around the world. Before I start delving deeper into the conversation today, I want to take this opportunity to make a few announcements. So I want to take this opportunity to send my condolences to the family of Al-Hajj Sheikh Badru Bunkedeko, who passed on this last week. Yazikibwa kurokusatu saa 10 e Uganda. I think kurokusatu oba kurokuna. Kurokuna ndowooza saa 10 e Uganda e Butambala. Njaga okutwala okusaasira kwange eri family members be bonna, including Mr. Mark Mulumba, who resides here in Toronto, Zahara Naseje, Miriam, Malaika Mariam Bunkedeko, and Haddad Bunkedeko. Haddad Tomsange Bunkedeko Chitalonyo. We do have a few other deaths in the community. Njaga okusasira muganda wange Patrick King, fiirwako muganda we Chitalonyo Sebo. We do have another death within the community. This is a Canadian wide actually. Mwanyinaffe yatufaako Vanessa. Omukyalo oyo tugezaako okwekumaakuma okusonda sente zimuzayo e Uganda. Basobole okumuzika ku butaka. Yali mwana muto mu myaka 21 tufaako wano. So kitalo nnyo. Njagala okukubiriza community ye Toronto n'abalala bonna around North America and Europe kulaba nti mutukwasizaako okulaba nti tuzaayo remains z'omwana oyo e Uganda. Again, thank you so much for joining us today to the state of the nation. I'm going to add my colleague Stella, and I'll be adding others as they come in as well. But before I invite Stella to say a word or two, these are a few things that I want us to question as we engage in this discussion. Of course, I hope Leonard is going to join us shortly, because I'll be asking him a few questions here and there. And of course, Counsel Aaron would be important for us to engage in this conversation more coherently as we continue to discuss whether the power belongs to the people, the state, the government, or the deep state. Because as I was engaging in this topic, a few things came to mind as well. Many people were telling me that I probably got it completely wrong, and what I'm talking about may not be what is really happening on the ground. That while we might be busy discussing the state and government, we might have forgotten the deep state, because the deep state might be more powerful than both the state and government. And I'm not here to say that everything we are saying is gospel, but I'm here to challenge each and every one of you who is engaging with us in this important discussion to participate, to challenge what we say, to unpack what we offer, and to see how to properly engage in a serious conversation regarding what is going on in Uganda. And hopefully, people within the African sphere can pick some lessons. If their countries have not yet been affected by what is happening in Uganda, hopefully they can deter that. So this conversation may act as a deterrent, but it may also act as some sort of recommendation of how to resolve some of the issues, the governance issues that are happening along the political landscape within the African context, specifically East Africa and Uganda in particular. So who are we discussing? Are we discussing government, state, the sovereign person or citizen, or are we discussing the deep state? Many of you saw what happened last week. We know that Muwanga Kivumbi, the deputy president of the National Unity Platform, was given bail. We also know that bail had the ink dried on those bail papers. He was abducted by people who appear to be in a army uniform. People who seem to have done the so-called abduction in front of the Uganda police. Think about that. We have not had any claims yet. We have not seen, at least to this particular moment, I have not seen any pictures similar to what happened to Elias Lukwago. Perhaps if the pictures have been released, I have not yet received them. But those pictures that pertain to the basement have not been seen again yet. We might see them. There has not been any sort of boasting that Muwanga is learning Runyankore or Swahili, as it has been in previous abductions. Will that happen? When it happens, what will that reveal about such conversations that we're talking about today? These are important questions, not just for me, who is interrogating them, but also for you, who is quietly engaging with them. Because it's us, the people on the peripheries, to unpack these questions, to unpack these concepts, the concepts of government versus state. Who owns what? Who holds what? Essentially, the state should own the constitution. The state should own, the state should have parliament. It should have the judiciary. That's the state, right? Government, on the other hand, should use those institutions to govern, to lead, and to ensure that the country is working more proactively. As we continue to wait for our colleagues to join us, allow me to welcome my colleague, senior citizen, Dr. Stella Nyanzi. Dr. Stella, always a pleasure to see you. A lot of stuff to talk about. Of course, I'm starting with interrogating the institution, but also there are some personal questions that can be involved in these conversations, even though I would prefer us to interrogate institutions, how institutions work, how governments work, and what should we citizens do to ensure that our government works appropriately. Dr. Stella, how are you doing today?
Hi, Henry. Thank you for creating the space and for introducing this invitation to interrogate these interesting concepts, the state and the government. Yeah, how am I doing today? I am well. I'm currently in Germany where it's very hot. Yeah, I continue to observe Uganda from exile, and the pace at which things are happening is very, very scary. I can't catch up. Henry, Sally, I cannot catch up with Uganda. The pace is so fast. But yes, when you were introducing, I heard you mention the passing of comrades who reside or have family members in Canada where you are. And I want to commiserate with them as well. Chitalo nnyo, chitalo ddala. In terms of the questions around the state and government, I think what I am looking forward to in today's or this week's space is mainly to learn from both yourself as a scholar of governance and also a scholar of politics and international relations, but also to learn keenly from Council Aaron Kiza, who remains in Uganda because he's been subjected to both the handling of government and the state and the deep state and non-government actors who act as if they are government. And I think his updates from Uganda would be very enriching to the conversation. But also I hope to learn a lot from Comrade Ronald Lenadegesa, who has been central to these Sunday meetings. And I think his own perspective as a strategist is important because unlike others who may be stuck, what I appreciate about Ronald Legesa is he's always thinking about how to help Ugandans think through the current moment. And I've done a lot of learning from him and his experiences. And I think part of what I gain from him every Sunday is hope and innovation, how to innovatively think about the current crisis, multiple crises we have in Uganda. So that's it for now. That's how I am really.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Those, of course, our followers have already started. They seem to be ahead of us as we we try to interrogate the issues at hand. Of course, we cannot manage how people think about what's going on in Uganda. We can only give people an opportunity to share what they think, but we can also structure the conversation by discussing particular topics on a particular day. Of course, this is Alex Lima, as you can see there. That is his thoughts. And it probably speaks to for so many people who have similar thoughts of what really is going on in Uganda. Of course, when we engage in such conversations, people are going to have their own interpretations of what we discuss, how we discuss it, and how what are the implications on the ground. Who is implicated, but in particular, who is orchestrating the different kinds of either mistreatment, threat, particular how the rule of law is being implemented or understood or discussed within the public realm in Uganda, because we know that even though we have a lot of intellectuals in Uganda, sometimes engaging in public discussions within Uganda can limit the scope of interrogation, because you can only say certain things, because saying the entire saying things as they are, as opposed as to how they appear, may either lead you into basement, or may lead you to be away from your family. We saw what happened to uh, Honorable Lord Mayor Emeritus Salongo Elias Lukwago, the pleading that he was doing to the magistrate, pleading for bail because he wants to go and see uh, his doctors. Of course, this is one of Uganda's epitome of elites, right? When you see him in that state, I want to play that thing, but I'm also hesitant to play it because it might take us away from the conversation today. And I'm hesitating to unpack the conversation today because I'm waiting for my folks to come in, because I want us to
Maybe
all
you
be on
should
the same
play.
page.
Do you want to play that clip as we wait for comrades, colleagues to come through?
Yeah, for
Or do
sure.
you want them to watch it as well?
I wanted them to watch it
Okay.
at some point, but I guess what we are doing right now is trying to paint a sketch of the picture uh, of what really is happening in Uganda from previous days. Because you said that you can't even keep up with what is going on in Uganda, which is true, because every morning there's something new to unpack, to discuss, and you're like, okay, is Uganda, it seems to be unrecognizable, right? Uh, at one point you're celebrating bail, at another point you are surprised that someone is being abducted in broad daylight. At one point, you're looking at disturbing pictures of a senior comrade in basement. At another point, you're looking at them begging the magistrate because their voice is being completely squished and trampled upon because they don't want to listen to it anymore. And that's the country that we call motherland. And having these conversations is hard for people on the ground. Even when they try to have those conversations, they have to be mindful on how they interrogate some of those issues. Who should you not offend? Because there are speculations that even Muwanga Kivumbi was re-abducted because of his selection on how to express himself right after he was given bail. His choice to openly express himself and speak his mind is the reason why he was taken back, because apparently that the notion that he would feel comfortable openly expressing himself would inspire others to do the same in an environment that is no longer conducive for free expression. Which makes me wonder whether we are in a state of anarchy. Are we in a state of anarchy? Is this the time of the Leviathan? Is this the time of the Leviathan in Uganda, where self-preservation is more important than speaking the truth? And in that case, what would self-preservation include? What would it mean? Does it mean joining the Leviathan or standing tall? Similar to what that Socrates did when he was accused of corrupting the youth. What are your thoughts, Dr. Stella?
Right. So, I mean, you raise many questions, and I suppose when you say, so one of my responses is that what is happening is not new. It's not new. what happened with the abduction of Honorable Muwanga Kivumbi just after he was released is very similar to what happened when the Black Mambas, if you remember the Black Mamba who descended upon court and abducted and detained people who'd been released by the High Court, right? And the very same questions about, I think you raised a question about who is it that came and took away Muwanga Kivumbi from the police. We can identify the police because there was a police patrol car that was packed to intercept Muwanga Kivumbi's vehicle. And then there were police officers in uniform present. And there was the person in civilian clothes who came and took him out of the car and directed him to another group of people who were wearing bulletproof and layer, and they took him away in the drone, what we call the drones in Uganda. And I think for me that the Black Mambas who descended upon the High Court to abduct people who had just been released are very same to men who are not wearing uniform, who are driving in the drone car, who come and abduct Muslim clerics and Muslims in Uganda who'd been released after they'd been charged and detained for a long time without trial on accusations around terrorism, you know. And I think that what Muwanga Kivumbi's abduction or re-abduction upon release, just a night after he was released from Luzira maximum security prison, is just another layer to this organ that can intercept judicial processes, can intercept police, can intercept high court orders for release, and then come and abduct and take away a person, keep them in an undetained facility. We don't know where he is. Very similar to yourself, I've been looking to see where is he sleeping? How many nights has he spent away from home? Who took him away? Why did they take him away? What are the charges? So if Councillor Aaron Kiza was here, I would have expected him to talk again about this difference between arrest, which is done by the police or by citizens according with a particular order set by law. This is how an arrest happens. Whoever is arresting you identifies themselves. They tell you what unit they belong to, maybe the police, maybe another unit of security. They tell you why you're being taken away. They tell you where you're being taken, and they give you access to a lawyer, a doctor, as well as family, right? But Muwanga Kivumbi's family don't know where he is. We don't know who abducted him and took him away. All that we know is this drone, which seems to be consistent throughout the last maybe 20 years, maybe more. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is that we're just seeing much more frequent occurrences of what was tried out earlier.
Yeah, maybe before you share your second thought regarding that particular issue, let me share that video so that people who are watching who may have missed the second abduction can see that abduction and perhaps get to understand the context in which we are discussing this. It's just looking for that video.
Bosco.
Now, this happened not just in the presence of the police, which is an institution of the state, but in the presence of the fourth estate as well. That, as you can see, that was captured by the national NBS, right? So not just in the presence of the Uganda police, but in the presence of the fourth estate, not just NBS, but other private media houses as well, in the presence of the citizens, the people of Uganda. And you say this is just, it is not unique to what has been happening before. This is not unique to what has happened in previous years. What does this tell us about the state we live in? Especially, I mean, I want you to build on that because I wanted people to get the context, but also to share your second thought as we continue in interrogating this issue.
Well, I suppose for me that it's good you showed the video once again, because as it was playing, I was watching keenly, and yes, I recognized, similar to yourself, the presence of NBS, and I just want to reiterate what has been said in public media, social media, by Ugandans who have been questioning why the NBS television crew have now become present. It seems to be a given that they're present whenever an abduction is going to happen. They were present at Lord Mayor Emeritus Salonwerias Lukwago's home the morning of his abduction as well. But so in terms of, and I think for me the question is, who is inviting the media? Who is informing them? Who leaks the information about the abduction? And I've been thinking about it in terms of organizing terror, engineering fear, silencing Ugandans. One of the things I would do as a propagandist for the ongoing military coup, if I were a manager of the coup, I would ensure that when these acts of violence, state violence, or deep state instituted violence against Ugandans are happening, that there's a camera rolling and there is free coverage of the level of violence, the level of impunity. The police seem to be rendered totally powerless. The police are just standing. They can't intercept, they can't block, they can't question. If the police was functioning in a normal state that observes rule of law, the expectation is they would stop these non-identifiable individuals who are carrying weapons, high power weapons, and they would stop them from abducting a recently released political prisoner who is on bail. One of the conditions of bail is that Muwanga Kivumbi and his co-accused others are available to attend court. So now he's being taken away. The role and the duty of the police would be to safeguard, protect this suspect who is released on bail from being abducted by this alternative outfit. So I think for me that one of the points I want to make about the media is that in terms of the functioning of the deep state, there is a very careful script about what the media produces in order to heighten the profile of the managers of the coup. There is strategic thought about what media house will present what news journalists are going to be there to report in time the level of violence that's being unleashed on the masses, the helplessness of the police. It's as if the managers of the coup are saying, what is your police going to do? You have no protection. If you dare do what Muwanga Kivumbi did and provoke us to come for you, even the police will be totally powerless in the face of our violence. So I think it's becoming established. They went into the abductors went into Lord Mayor's home in similar fashion. The cameras were rolling. Individuals in his home were forbidden from recording. All their phone gadgets were confiscated from them. But we see a recording of the men with guns who intercept, break into his home, and we see them taking him away in the little van, the drone. So that's, I think, the second point around the sort of public media that's going to be allowed. And I want to say that in the context of NTV and Daily Monitor and Spark TV and Dembe Radio, Dembe FM radio station having been taken off air, being shut down, again in circumstances that are not regular. If Nyombi Tembo and Uganda Communications Commission, UCC, which is responsible for giving licenses and permits to media houses to operate, they were also catching up with the closure and shutdown of the National Media Group franchise, the different outlets, just as I am catching up with what's happening. So I think that part of what's happening now is a repositioning of the role of the media, a clampdown and abduction of journalists who are critical, who are not towing the line of the managers of the military coup is happening in real time, and we're witnessing it. And I think related that, I want to add the abduction of Timothy Kaliegira, right? So Nyombi Tembo and UCC and the Minister of Information and Communication would ordinarily operate in the government that's administering the state, Ugandan state, yeah? But suddenly there's another layer of deep state that you'd refer to. And the deep state has got a very specific agenda for the public media about reshaping what is permissible. In your introduction, you invited me to comment on the fact that Muwanga Kivumbi seems to have crossed a line that's not supposed to be crossed by opposition members. There are things that the current coup managers, the military brutal regime under Muhoozi Kainerugaba, they want us to say particular stories, particular narratives, propaganda, and not others. They want the public media and social media to be fearmongers. We are going to be reduced to becoming fearmongers, and we will not be critical. We're not invited or allowed to be critical or to resist openly. And when we do so, they abduct us. They raid our homes like they raided the home of Arias Lukwago. They raid our homes like they raided the home of Timothy Kaliegira. They raid our homes like they raided the home of Miriam Matembe. And what's consistent with all these people who've been abducted and the press media houses that have been shut down is that they have all been critical of the military takeover, and there seems to be parallel government, the government that was elected into power and sworn into office in May, but there's another tier that is really militant and brutal and lawless, and they are unleashing a level of impunity at such a fast speed that many Ugandans are going to be silenced. And I think in that regard, my other point will then be around your point about the silencing of critical intellectuals, the public intellectuals, academics, and everyday elderly wise men. So the role of the Elders Council, the role of religious leaders, the role of cultural institutions and cultural leaders, the role of the wise men, the academic interlocutors who are best at universities and institutions of higher learning, so professors, scholars, lecturers, student, the shutdown of student protests and student criticism and alternative student campaigns, which include members of political parties in the opposition, all of that that's happening with the intelligentsia of the nation, the clamp down on critical voice that's informed by scholarship and research and history and deep debate, because part of the culture of academic communities is debate. We have to debate, we have to interrogate, we have to be critical. That is how we renew knowledge. That is how we debunk myths. That is how we convert and teach others. Debate is important. Critique is important. Criticism is important. Exchange of ideas. We don't have to agree. And that is what democracy means for me. That is why an open Ugandan state what it would mean for me as an academic. Free thought, criticism, critique, questioning, interrogation, even challenge, and even condemnation and disagreement that says, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, I don't agree with this element of your organizing. I agree with your role perhaps as a military man, but I don't agree with your role as a person who says to the speaker of parliament that we appoint you and we don't appoint you. We endorse you and we don't endorse this one. We are going to, there are particular things I must be able to criticize within the leadership of the country. I mean, so your point about the withdrawal of public intellectuals, academic scholars, professors, university-based thinkers, but also elders, religious, the wise men, the poets, the musicians of our society, is understandable because of the high level of repression, right? So you asked, are we seeing anarchy? I think that a precursor to anarchy is the closure, the clampdown of free thought and interrogation. Part of what I see happening with this military takeover is the requirement that we all think one thought. We all think a dominant narrative that's been produced by the coup managers, and it's very much fear-driven. You talked about self-preservation. I think that individuals are now retracing their steps back to the position of safety and self-preservation. And I think part of the commentary that happened when Muwanga Kivumbi was abducted was, he's been away from free society for 6 months. He doesn't know what's been happening in Uganda. There's a new order. I think I saw Comrade Honorable Semujunganda saying in a tweet to Muwanga Kivumbi, Comrade, when you are aware there's a new order that's been established, we don't have free thought, we're not allowed to criticize. But I think that one of the things I realized with that comment that's been made by so many people, and in fact, another layer of that comment is blame being put on members of NUP leadership who are present in Butambala when Honorable Muwanga Kivumbi went back home. And they said, why didn't they caution him? Why didn't they tell him that the times have changed? Why didn't they advise him not to speak so freely in terms of criticizing the first family? And I think if we allow ourselves to get subdued, beaten down, subdued to the point where we cannot question or be critical of the very engineers and implementers of our subjugation, then we totally yield and allow them to take over without any resistance, without any challenge. And I think that I am one of the people who really celebrated when I heard Muwanga Kivumbi standing up on top of whatever, I think it was on top of a van or his car, and speak with so much defiance, with a little smile on his face, and call out the 4 actors. He said, there are 4 people who've been oppressing Uganda, and he names them in Luganda. He names them and says, Laddu, which is thunder, came and struck her. She's out of play, okay? And the people clap. And then he says, there is Janet Museveni. God is coming for her. And some of the people in the crowd say she's already dead. And then he says, I even heard the father Museveni, when he was speaking, his voice no longer comes out. His voice is so soft. He's also on his way out. And then he goes to the fourth character, naming the very actors of our oppression. We talk about family rule. We talk about military takeover. We talk about the dynasty of the Bachwezi. These are the main players. I mean, I would add Salim Saleh to that line. I would add so many other players within the Museveni family line, including in-laws and friends, yeah? But at the helm, he then says, and who is the fourth person? That son, who is he? What do you call him? Chitamaniche echichi, echitamivu, echichi, echitamivu. And I know that Ugandans are being forced to stop talking. Because when Miriam Atembe spoke against the first family and she questioned Muhozi, saying, Muhozi, who do you think you are? She was abducted and taken to a basement and tortured, thrown into Luzira Women Prison, where she spent a night. She was charged with sectarianism, which brings shame to her, being an elderly person who was former minister of ethics and integrity. So the shaming of loud voices, the punitive measures, the reprisal, the repression that we face when we speak out is an example. And if we allow ourselves to stay in that subdued posture of people who are saying Muwanga Kivumbi should not have spoken as freely as he did, we are yielding too fast without any resistance. And for me, as I sit in exile, I'm thinking maybe the people in Uganda, for the sake of self-preservation, must uphold that posture for a season. But there are many of us who are outside Uganda where we can speak with relative safety. Some people, when I say this, say, Stella, it's you're disillusioned. It's an illusion. You're not safe. They're going to come for you. But I think part of what I have decided to do is to continue speaking out wherever I can, whenever I can, and speak as honestly, brutally honest as I can, because their brutality is physical violence. Their brutality is abduction and torture and detainment in ungazetted facilities. It's criminal. My brutality is honest truth to power. And I think that the call then is for other comrades and colleagues and friends and Ugandans and friends of Uganda who are in countries outside the borders of Uganda. If we can speak out, please continue speaking out. Because many Ugandans are now reduced to positions of saying, yes, please, or else silencing themselves. Ugandans are reduced to positions of praising the military junta or else silencing themselves. And that's not acceptable. And maybe my last point in terms of interjection is a question around the weapons that we saw. Those are big guns, Henry. Big guns. Who is arming the abductors who come and abduct us and take us away? I heard about that elite unit called the Special Forces Command, SFC, right? They have been empowered using Uganda taxpayers' money, using borrowed money, debt that my children and your children will be paying for, right? But the same question I ask about the big guns is the same question I ask about the people who are fueling the drones, the fuel for the drones. Who signs for it? Who pays the drone driver? Who pays for the guns? Who pays for the instructions that go out? Today we are going to have field, and our field work is going to be Muwanga Kivumbi's. We're going to wait for him. Who is coordinating this, and whom do they serve? Are they serving the people of Uganda? Are they serving the government of Uganda? Are they serving the Ugandan state? Are they serving this deep state you're talking about? Or in fact, is it the managers of the coup who have totally taken over, perhaps even from what we've been calling deep state? Because talk about the deep state was introduced when we had talk about the mafia, Remember, we wondered about the mafia. Timu Uganda mulimu mafia. And I think in terms of deep state organizing, that there are layers. And my question is really about the relationship between SFC, between PLU, and between the mafioso of old that we had in Uganda. Is there a relationship? Who are they serving? I know that the SFC, there's an act of parliament, or maybe even an amendment to the Uganda Defense Forces Act, where they try to legalize the SFC outfit. Okay. But for a long time, we had that it was a small, unclear, illegitimate faction, an army within an army. It's now grown, right? But who is raising challenge and resisting against the establishment, entrenchment, normalization of the operations of the SFC? That is an important question for me. Questions around the state and the government are important in terms of thought, in terms of resistance and mobilizing Ugandans to resist. One of the things we have to contend with is this blatant military violence that's being unleashed through the capabilities of the SFC under the leadership of Muhoozi Kainerugaba. And how do we mobilize in the face of the normalization of this violence? But alongside this is the question of the PLU. PLU is not a political party. PLU is not a civil society organization. PLU is not a movement. PLU is not a corporate limited or non-limited. PLU is not a private non-profit organization. What is PLU? What is this outfit? So you're asking about the state and government. Where does PLU fit? They have fit in NRM, fit in independent corps, fit in a political party organizing, but they're not a political party. They have ministers who are appointed on behalf of PLU and stand as PLU members. They have speakers of parliament and a deputy speaker of parliament that they have appointed after endorsement, and we saw them take office. They abduct. So what is the relationship between PLU and SFC, the Ugandan state, and our government? And when I talk about government, I'm really interested in the intersections between PLU, SFC, Muhoozi Kainerugaba on one hand, but our parliament on the other. If they have appointed the speaker and the deputy speaker, PLU claim that they are going to change the ways in which the leader of opposition is ousted, and then they're going to oust current leader Joel Senyonyi. So they already have percentages within parliament, members of parliament, who we thought were either NRM or SF or rather independent, but they're members of parliament who are PLU, and they are on the hierarchy that Muhoozi Kainerugaba introduced. So there's that level of government in the legislative or parliament. There's another layer of PLU members that we see in judiciary. And I think for me, they're represented by the face of KK, Chiryowa Chiwanuka, and several others who have studied the law and are either lawyers or members of the judiciary, right? And magistrates who are enforcing very specific orders from above when we see colleagues and comrades brought before particular judges, and the judges are waiting for a military order from above. So the judiciary is also influenced and infiltrated by the PLU. And I think the third arm is the executive, where clearly the father, when he spoke the last time, when he gave his State of the National address last Saturday, or was it Sunday, he clarified for us that he approves of the rising of Muhoozi Kainerugaba and his generation of younger military personnel. So and then the third arm, I think maybe the fourth arm of the state, where the state and government that I'm questioning in terms of PLU and Muhoozi Kainerugaba is the media, because again we see Andrew Mwenda and Alan Kasuja, prominent young Ugandan journalists, managing a particular propaganda machine that represents both the father and the son. But I think Andrew Mwenda, we've seen more and more that he's working closely with the CDF, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. And so a total sort of intersection of PLU and SFC and Muhoozi Kainerugaba infiltrating all these layers of the state: judiciary, legislature, the executive, and the public media, right? And so in terms of separation, I see a merger. And perhaps it's not a merger, maybe it's an infiltration. I see the tentacles of what began as SFC and then branched out into MK movement. Remember the MK movement with the Gashumbas and the David Kabandas? And it's now becoming something, a monster that's rolling out right before our eyes. Is it the deep state? Is it another configuration? I think for me, there's a rebirthing of what we used to call a mafia in Uganda. And characteristically, they're very much conjoined as twins to SFC, PLU, MK movement. And I think when I say MK movement, I add all the border men who follow them, all the young people in universities who follow them, and every other person who wants to take advantage of the moment. Yeah. So the question about who is funding the guns of those who abduct us is a question about resources, finance, like thought, ideology, thinking. And I think for me, that's an important question. Who is empowering those who are violating a current government, if we have government, and abusing all the organs of the state that should be working for the people of Uganda? Because by empowering our abductors, by empowering that layer that's commingled and its head is the head of Muhoozi, by empowering them, I think Ugandan lives stand a lot to lose. We have a lot to lose. And maybe as I learned, part of my worry is that I don't see coordinated, targeted organizing of resistance against the emergence of Muhoozi Kainerugaba and his different outfits that are taking over what used to be called the deep state. I don't see alternative organizing that's at par with the sort of horsepower or firepower they are unleashing onto us. And I don't see enough thought and thinking in terms of our intellectual leaders, whether it's cartoonists or poets, old men, religious leaders, the Sheikh Muzatas of our, where are they? They died, and who are the replacements? The Bobby Wines, the Kizza Besigye's. I don't see enough momentum in terms of leadership to confront the new enemy that we have. The new enemy of Ugandans is this amalgamation of outfits headed by Muhoozi Kainerugaba, protected by the SFC. Their leadership in ideology or thought leaders are seated in PLU, and they have a range of MK movement formations that are spreading out into the communities. I don't see us organizing well enough to address that. And that's my worry, Henry.
Well, this has been one of the most coherent, provoking monologue
Is it
from you.
coherent? Well, I hope it is.
Uh,
I'm just thinking on my feet.
you are thinking on your feet, but you're also offering very provoking thoughts as we engage in this very important conversation. Because uh, a few questions that you have touched on also remind me of some of the most important aspects of Ugandan citizens as a people, because Article 1 of the Constitution empowers people. It says power belongs to the people. Uh, Yet, when we closely examine what is happening in Uganda today, when we interrogate state versus government, in reality, government should be voted in uh, by citizens who are voted in by people, are the ones who are chosen to become either ministers or the executive to govern the executive and stuff. So those people essentially uh, those people essentially become the government. But when they become government, there's also a state. A state is really the parliament, the judiciary, uh, the police, the army, the military. Uh, Yet, when you look at what is really happening right now, the police seems powerless because there's an alternative military. We don't really know if this is the UPDF, because some of the folks who abducted Muwanga Kivumbi were not even in uniform. Even though they were yielding guns, you're questioning who is sponsoring these guys, who is feeding them, who is giving. Where do they get the power to hold those guns? Where in part uniform, part layer. Most of them were in layer. Others were putting on uh, military attire. For instance, the people who abducted Lukwago at his house were all putting on military attire, but Lukwago ended up in a basement. Right? So who funds them? When we examine MK, MK in essence should be the CDF. The CDF should be under the army. The army should be answering to parliament or the legislature or parliament, because parliament answers to the people, because the people have the power essentially, because power belongs to the people, right? So if power belongs to the people should be able to question what happens in parliament or in the legislature. The legislature should be able to question what happens in other institutions, because they're overseeing other institutions like the police, the army. So they should be able to invite leaders of these respective institutions to answer serious questions regarding the state of the nation. Yet, in your submission, you say, which is rightly true also, that MK, in his capacity as chairman of PLU, which PLU we don't know what it is. Some people say it is a registered organization in Uganda's ecosystem. It's a registered organization, but it's not really political. It's not really a political party. It subscribes to the NRM, but it's really not NRM. It has, according to reports, MK has incorporated the Speaker of Parliament and the Deputy Speaker of Parliament among his subordinates within PLU. But remember, Parliament, which these two lead, is supposed to question how the military operates, how the police operates, how the CDF operates. If in his other hat, as chairman of PLU, is inviting them, co-opting them into PLU as his subordinates, how are they going to keep him accountable? Right? If they can't keep him accountable, does Parliament still have power? If it doesn't have power, do the people still have power? So who has really the power that we are trying to understand here? So another question that is very important to interrogate is, what happens when one arm of the state grants liberty while the other depraves it. And this is in regard to what happened to Muwanga Kivumbi, because Muwanga Kivumbi was given bail. But his bail, now he cannot fulfill the conditions of that bail because he's abducted and we don't know where he is, which means he's going to skip his bail. And when he skips his bail, that would be not in order with the bail conditions, right? Which means he won't qualify for bail anymore because he has skipped bail. But we all know that he was abducted by some sort of either deep state or state, right? So as we interrogate state and government, where do we fit in the deep state? How do we define it? How do you define that deep state, really? Who leads the deep state? I mean, you talked about the mafia. Gilbert Bukenya used to call it the mafia, right? Other people have called it the deep state, right? And these people seem to have absolute power. Yet we are told by the Constitution that the people, power belongs to the people. Does power belong to the people in Uganda? And I think this is important because it is something that Comrade Elias Lukwago talked about. I say comrade, but I respect that he's a former Lord Mayor, former Honorable of Parliament. So he is one of the flamers of the Constitution, actually, because he was MP before he became Lord Mayor. So let me play a video of Mr. Lukwago talking about these issues, because it might be helpful for us to understand what we are up to, what is happening in our country today, and how we must engage with it going forward. And this reminds me of the recently retired justice who was Mr. Ogo talked about the state of intimidating lawyers, but it's not just the lawyers that are being intimidated. There are other people that are also being intimidated. And I think that's because if the lawyers...
Profession is under threat. Our noble profession is under threat. I've never been convicted by any other civilian court. The only conviction I carry is that of the General Court Martial, and it haunts me. You and members of the bar are not safe either. It's the reason, Mr. President, we ask for the intervention of the bar to ensure that there is fair hearing. Mr. President, we do invite the radical new bar to bang the tables for the rule of law to prevail.
So this really talks to how lawyers are being intimidated, right? So if lawyers are being silenced, how do we expect other folks, regular folks, to not be intimidated? I think even Matebe recently was asked to offer some of her opinions, and she wasn't willing to offer opinions because she was like, no, I'm not giving my opinions anymore. It's a very small clip that I saw on one of the TikTok handles where she was being encouraged to speak about the state of events in Uganda. She wasn't willing to say, and this is one of the most outspoken senior seniors in Uganda, when people like Matembe decide to stay away in commenting on events in Uganda, what does that mean for Uganda? And I think, let me show that it's a very small clip on TikTok, but you've seen her gestures that she's shying away from saying anything. See what I mean? Like she's being encouraged to speak about. Of course, she's being encouraged to speak about corruption. I'm not sure how recent this is. I hope it's not after she was abducted and taken into the ordeal of being to jail and all the intimidations that has gone on. I hope that Honorable Dr. Miriam Matembe is not giving up on speaking up as one of the leaders. Sorry, as one of the leaders in our country. I think it's important for people like Dr. Matembe to continue speaking up, because they are all we've got right now on the ground. We have to stand up for them, but they also have to trust that we won't keep quiet when they decide to speak either on our behalf or on their behalf or on behalf of human rights in Uganda, on behalf of strengthening institutions in Uganda, whether it's the IGG, the Inspectorate General of Government, that monitors how government institutions work, how public servants operate, how public funds are being spent, whether it is how Parliament operates or other institutions. We hope that Dr. Honorable Miriam Matembe is not going to give up on speaking truth to power, because when such senior comrades give up on the ground, just like many people in uniform have given up, generals in uniform seem to have given up. I don't know if they have given up, but they seem to have given up because they don't speak more often than they should. Unlike Comrade General Kahindo Tafile, who usually speaks out regardless of where he stands in government. He's not a perfect human himself, but I doubt there's a perfect human in the world, right? So sometimes he comes and speaks out, and sometimes he speaks out for his own interests, right? But we have no perfect human being. And I think it's important for us to encourage people to speak up, to speak for institutions, to defend government institutions, to keep the state accountable, even within their individual capacities, because when we lose voices of reason in a country that is so young as Uganda, then we are not just losing the country itself, we are losing ourselves. And I think these are important conversations for us to interrogate, but also for us to continue reflecting on what is happening in the world around us, but also beyond us. How do our neighbors behave? How do other countries, specific other countries that refer to as colonial countries? Because I've recently seen the Ugandan Law Society trying to decolonize, and I applaud them for that act, specifically through the lawyers, and changing some of the language that is being used in the courts of laws, or how the judges or magistrates are addressed by the lawyers. And I think these are all important aspects of empowering Ugandans, ensuring that there's self-sovereignty, not just within the courts of law, but within the citizens, and that people are being given back the power that they should have, as the Constitution stipulates in Article 1, that power belongs to the people. And I think these are all important aspects of seeking self-governance and seeking a functional country. But it's also important for us to ensure that folks continue to speak from positions of knowledge, and that they continue to challenge government, not because they hate it or not because they're just being opposition, but because they want a functional society, a society that is going to be admirable, not just to future Ugandans, but also to our neighbors and other folks that look up to Africa as the hope for tomorrow. And I think this is important. We cannot pretend to want to be better than the US or the UK or other global north countries when we are not taking deliberate steps to get there. And I think ensuring that voice is protected, individual and institutional voices are protected, because as it looks right now, even institutional voices seem to be overruled. They seem to not be given the courtesy they deserve to act within their scope to ensure that the country functions justly, both toward the individuals but also toward the institutions that they serve. Those are some of my thoughts, Dr. Stella, as we continue to engage with this conversation. Unfortunately, Aaron doesn't seem to, I don't know if he's fine. You know, in Uganda, it's complicated. Like just a mere seeing someone's picture on a flyer may get him in trouble. So I hope he's fine. He hasn't responded to my message in the last couple of hours. I hope he's fine. He was supposed to be here. I guess I'm supposed to be joining us still. I'm not sure if he's ready now. But that is what is happening, Dr. Stella, as we continue to engage in this conversation. I wonder what your thoughts are based on the last video that I played, but also I think I should also play Lukwago's video when he was pleading with the magistrate to let him go get some medical attention or die peacefully, die in a better way than he's being held right now.
Sentence for me, and all I can say to Allah, if you are to take me, my Lord, the God who created me, kindly take me without a lot of pain. If I may make a last prayer, your worship, instead of taking me through all this pain, I be put on some palliative care so that I die a less painful death. Otherwise, the pain is too much. I know I will die. I know all of us will die. But I wouldn't want to die a painful death. I beg to pray.
Now, that video is much longer than that. I wanted to get a smaller video that I picked on TikTok through the BBS. This is a senior citizen, not just a senior citizen, but he's also the Lord Mayor Emeritus of Kampala City. Kampala City Council Authority is the biggest authority that manages the capital city of Uganda, Kampala. He has been Lord Mayor for more than 10 years. He has served the people of Kampala. He has also served the people of Uganda through his different capacities as a lawyer, but also as the president of a powerful political party. He was also the lawyer for former presidential candidate, Dr. Kizza Besigye, the former personal doctor for President Museveni himself, who is facing allegations of treason. This is the kind of pleading this citizen, senior citizen, is doing. Is choosing a lesser method of death, and he's not the first one to die in prison. I believe Dr. Kiza Besje's brother died in a similar manner. He was taken to prison, asked them to go to his doctors. They couldn't let him go. A few days when he was late to go to the hospital, he died because it had taken too long for him to access medical attention. It seems to be the same ordeal that ex-mayor Elias Lukwago is going through. And this is the country that is supposed to be the Pearl of Africa. When you see these kinds of conversations, what comes to mind, Dr. Stell?
Yeah, I mean, so what comes to mind, I think, for me is the desperate times in which we are living. So when Kizza Besigye was teaching before he was abducted from Kenya and renditioned back to Uganda, he always taught about the crisis facing Uganda, right? He's been away for almost 2 years battling against the charges of treason that are slapped against him. But he always taught about crisis, you know? And if people did not see what he was talking about then, it is now very clear. And I think if I were to start with the last video that you shared, I have not seen somebody deteriorate very quickly as fast as I've seen with Elias Lukwago. When he was taken from his house, he was upright, his hair was black, his stance was, he was bouncing, he was put into that car and taken away. And then we saw his pictures on Muhoozi Kainerugaba's tweet or his X space where he was putting on, he's putting on pampers, he is blindfolded, he's passed out on the floor. And then when he comes out, he's silent. One of the things that happened the first time he was produced at Chira Road, Chira Division Police Station, was his total silence. His lawyer, Medad Segona, did not speak to us about what Elias Lukwago had said, and Elias Lukwago was not given a chance to speak about what happened to him when he was in Muhoozi's ungazetted detention facility. And I think for me that the next time we hear about his condition is when his wife is pleading, and then he's taken to court where his medical reports are produced. He has dislocated discs in his spinal cord, and the history of his medical treatment abroad, Kenya, India, has sort of played out before our eyes over the last few years in Uganda. No Ugandan doesn't know about Elias Lukwago's health challenges that arose principally because of another previous illegal arrest. And I think when he talks in the second video you showed and says he's only been imprisoned by the military, that is his testimony. He's never been taken away and imprisoned through legal, legitimate processes. So what strikes me when we now see him, his hair has lost color, his face is sunken, the stress and pain is written all over him. He can no longer stand straight, and he's pleading for mercy, saying, God, take me, just give me medicine such that I die a pain-free death. It is pitiable. But I think the very same degeneration that happened to Erias Lukwago is the very same that we saw happening to Dr. Kizza Besigye, who was abducted and alongside Rutale. And when I saw Dr. Kizza Besigye struggling to breathe, I don't know if you remember when he was produced in court, too weak to walk on his own, sitting in a wheelchair, pushed in by a wheelchair, a usually characteristically strong Muhororo Mchigaman that we've seen standing defiantly in the face of those Black Mamba. What's that cannon? You know, that bullet cannon called? Chizinga. I don't know what it's called in English. Yeah, anyway. But you know, those pictures where Dr. Kizza
Black
Besigye
Mamba. They call it the Black
tankers.
Mamba?
Those are tankers.
Tankers, okay.
Yes, because in Kampala he would stand up. Those tankers would be facing him with their big artillery, and he would stand with his two fingers and wave at them and talk to them.
Yes. I thought it was called Black Mamba, but okay, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the Mambas are the big cars, but I wanted that. There's that word with Emidugo Ejeri.
Tanker, yeah.
Yeah. So the deterioration in health that we witness with Lord Mayor is the very same deterioration I witnessed when Kizza Besigye was rolled in. Man, unable to speak, unable to breathe. Before they began dressing him in masks, facial masks, I remember looking at Kizza Besigye's face and he was struggling to breathe, his tongue, his eyes. And I thought, oh my God, Dr. Agenda Kufa, these guys are murdering Doctor right before our eyes. And of course, in the moment of his defiant hunger strike, yeah, he was defying against something very similar to what you said earlier, Henry, that the Constitutional Court of Uganda, following from the Kabaziguruka petition to the Constitution, had outlawed presentation of civilians before military court and said, release them. So the Constitutional Court, the highest appellate court in Uganda, had said, return all civilians to civilian courts. And so that is the state, right? Decreeing. And the deep state or something, the military, under instructions of Muhoozi and perhaps his father, had renditioned Kizza Besigye after abduction from Kenya, slapped him with these treason charges, and they refused to transfer Besigye's files from military court to civilian court, and he went on hunger strike. Yeah. But in terms of the deterioration of our leaders, that the current managers of the military coup are taking the life out of our leaders before our very eyes. They suck the life out of them, as Ugandans watch every day on TV. And it's as if they're showing us, this is what we can do to your leaders. This is what we can do to your strong men. You think his rule of law, he's going to suffer and be in so much pain because of rule of law, you know? And the question for me is, what exactly did Erias Lukwago do? What is he charged with? Misprision of treason? The idea that he got access to information courtesy of his client lawyer relationship with his with the suspects he's representing, and he this charge was slapped on him when he had just declared that on Monday he was going to serve Muhoozi Kainerugaba with summons to give his side of the story. Why is he threatening Kizza Besigye with murder by hanging? And I think, so in terms of questioning, there's a question about, we need to interrogate these trumped-up charges, that lawyers, professionals are being slapped with trumped-up charges simply because of carrying out their profession, that those who are going to represent revolutionaries and the resistance leaders we have are going to be slapped with trumped-up charges. It's as if this is what the managers of the military coup are saying to us. If you stand up in your profession to defend leaders of the resistance, we're going to come after you. But I want to say that very similar to Erias Lukwago, who had indicated that on Monday he was going to look for Muhoozi Kainerugaba and serve him with these papers. Muwanga Kivumbi had also said, on Monday, I'm going to rest for 2 days. Released on Friday, rest on Saturday and Sunday. On Monday, I'm going to the NUP headquarters to start afresh, such that when our leader, Bobby Wine, comes back, he will find us still going after the dictator and our oppressors. So
I have a video for that if you want me to play it.
Yes, please. 2 men. Please play the video. I will stop when you start playing it. 2 men who have warned that they're coming to build the resistance. Muhoozi, we are coming to serve you with papers. Come and explain to Ugandans why you said you're going to hang Kizza Besigye. And Muwanga Kivumbi, who says, on Monday, when nakoma wentandikira nzija kuzimba bupya. Both of them are intercepted, abducted, and thrown into ungazetted detention facilities just before the day of their before they present, the plan they'd laid out to us. So in terms of strategy,
Muwanga Kivumbi, Lord atendekise bibi, Mungu akuandikire ebibonerezo 10 times. Muganda Katonda amuwa ebibonerezo mmeka? 10 times. Oyo omukyala wano yakozesa ssente za palamenti n'atwala bamasenga kukumula n'abatwala emaka ng'abagamba kintu kimu bemudde eyo bonna bali balowooza nti besiba MP nga sisira mu palamenti siriwa ddala ati ndiwa nnyo mukomera ne Nabi Yusufu ne Mandela ne Martin Luther King n'abalala bonna bateekebwako sirina kyensobola kubawa sirina kyensobola kubasasula amazima munda ze kinabakolamu omulimu ne musigala nga mukola ki nga muzagala kyensobola okubasasula nkimanyi kulwanyisa abantu basibiri ate kati baali bana mubamanyi ababadde bonoona eggwanga lino baali bana nga babulire omu bamuyita Triple A Anita Mongo omu yamukubisiza laddu n'emukuba bwettu n'agweri oyo yabadde omulala yali mukyala w'omukulu oyo yeerabira kyobulamu bw'ekisebino bwa kiseera naye babaawutwomulamuza nga baagala okutukuba amasasi kakati olulyedo nawulira ono bosi Museveni nga naye eddoboozi terikyavaayo neŋŋamba Allahu Akbar Mungu wa buki kati mumanyi asigadde kumaliza makolo kubala fabakolo kubala NRM yenkanakana corruption buba buli bwaki kakati NRM nezaala omwana naye nga avudde mwana wa kulya nguzi bamuyita PLU mukubala ogira negative mukiregedde n'obazaamu negative ofuna positive buli lwodira corruption alwanyise corruption ofuna muwa corruption tokwata NRM ali corrupt n'okwata PLU oba muhoozi ayagala accountability tubulire sente z'okozesa okuddukanya PLU ozijjawo tubulire oba tomenya ssemateeka wa Uganda gwe muhoozi kayina Uganda okuba nga mu buki mu byobufuzi tubulire nga muhoozi kayina Uganda kyolwanyisa engozi wajja otya okubeera nga gwe kamanda w'amagye nga naawe tolina lutalo lwebalwanako bwe wagenda e Congo wali twaisi w'omusajja abajasi baffe baafa nga bakuuma bukuumi tolina lutalo lwebakokuba people power abankuba amasaswali ne bannemererwa basobola n'okunzita naye ne bamunanzita olaba ekiri wano bonna ba myaka mito mwenna muli ba myaka miki muzaale abaana nga mukyali muzaale bangi mulemereko buli lwosigala mu lutalo obeera muwanguzi buli lwosigala mu lutalo obeera muki mwe temulina okukola temufaayo ntalo mmeka ze bawawangudde mwe musigale nga mukola ki nga mulwana bwe muba nga mulwana victory is just next step.
Henry omusajja yawanza amasasi
ogawulidde bannaye sajja wanza nga bw'ogambye nti no Elias Lukwago yawoninga ndi ku Monday mpapula ngenda zitwala nziwa omukulu alina okushowing up mu court nono naye yagambye ku Monday mpumulamu ennaku ezi ku Monday ngenda ku office tutandikire we twakoma. Your thoughts as we engage in this conversation? I mean, I'm not sure if you want me to translate into English, but I think you said it already in English. This is a gentleman.
Do you have some of your audience members who don't speak Luganda? Maybe you want to summarize.
I have. This is a global podcast. Listen.
Do you want to briefly translate for them the essence of what he was saying?
Well, the essence of what he was saying. This is a gentleman who had just been released from prison, given bail. Obviously, he had just been given bail, and essentially, what he was saying is that he's not going to give up his free speech. He's not going to give up his free speech. He's going to continue speaking loudly on the issues that pertain to human rights, rule of law, and the end of corruption in Uganda. Of course, he cited some of the culprits or the folks thought about as the people behind ensuring that there's not rule of law, even though they purport to be fighting for the rule of law. There's no mechanisms for keeping people accountable, even though these folks seem to be fighting corruption. They're not really fighting corruption in one way or another, but they're just taking advantage of the system to entrench themselves into power. I'm not going to delve into naming names. You had the names, but this is a guy who is thought not to have ground support, grassroots support. But the picture says, the video says something otherwise. You can see the people around him very fired up and supporting him, welcoming him home, like Jesus was welcomed to Netherlands. So yeah, there's a lot that is going on in Uganda, and this is one of the people that is being persecuted by government, the government of Uganda, and someone who was recently re-abducted after the court had given him bail for for the fabricated terrorism cases against him, because there's really no evidence that he's a terrorist. He's been MP for more than 10 years. He has never run out of the country. His rhetoric might be oppositional to what government messages are, but they're reasonable within the contestations of ideas, right? I mean, it's like saying that Fanon is a terrorist just because you may not agree with how you're managing government affairs or which approaches you're employing for managing government. So this is what we are really dealing with at the core, and of course, as I said earlier, speaking truth to power in Uganda today is dangerous. It is tantamount to anarchy. It's that most people think about self-preservation before they speak in Uganda. That was contrary to what Muwanga Kivumbi did. The gentleman that I'm talking about right here is Muwanga Kivumbi. When he came out, he spoke his truth. He spoke it openly, loudly, without fear or favor, without censorship whatsoever. And this is a guy who was just coming from jail, maximum prison. He's a political prisoner. He was a political prisoner. And of course, he shared his mind the way he thought best to share it for his people to better understand him. Of course, we have to think about the different contexts within which political actors in Uganda operate, right? When you're operating in such context, you have to ensure that your primary audience, who are the people who support you, understand what you're saying because you're speaking their language, right? But at the same time, you have to understand what to say when you go in certain spheres, like Parliament, for instance. When you hear him make a case in Parliament, it's completely different from when you see him in public when he's interrogating issues to his people on the grass at the ground. Of course, there's another video showing him when he was coming out of jail. Immediately when he had just come out of jail. I mean, I'm not sure if that's necessary now, but it can also show you the amount of support, the ground support that he has. And this support may not be replicated when the General MK, who is the CDF right now, goes to the public, to the ground.
Kulo amyuka President wa NOP Mohamed Muwanga Kivumbi lwe yayimbuddwa kooti oluvannyuma lw'okumala ebbanga ng'ali mu nkomyo ng'awera ennemba n'emisango egy'enjawulo egyamuggulwako mu January ow'omwaka guno. Mu maka ga Muwanga Kivumbi endongo esuze ekuba nga bannabutambala bamukulisa ekkomera okutuukira ddala ku makya ng'ekyasindogoma. Bakira buli ddakiika eyitawo ng'abawagizi be beeyiwa mu maka ge wakati mu kuyimba obuyimba obumusuusuuta. Bano battotodde ennyonta gye babadde nayo okuva mu nti waabwe lwe yasibibwa. Essaawa y'ejjuma bw'etuuse omubaka Muwanga Kivumbi awerekeddwako abawagizi be ne boolekera omuzikiti omunene Ekibibi okutendereza Allah n'okumwebaza okumuwonya ekkomera. Ekitali kya bulijjo omuzikiti guno gujjudde ne gubooga abaddu ba Allah abayisiraamu olw'ejjuma n'egenda mu maaso. Omubaka Mohamed Muwanga Kivumbi olukutte akazindaalo enduulu n'esaanikira omuzikiti.
Salaamu aleikum. Kati omulimu ogw'oggulu gwennyina muguulidde.
Muwanga Kivumbi mbigambo byatandikiddewo okuwanda omuliro. Avumiridde abo abaagaliza bannaabwe ekkomera kyokka ne yeebaza abasirikale mu kkomera ly'Ekitalya olw'obutamutulugunya.
Oyogedde kitono. Abantu b'e Butambala banfiirako. Tebakoma kunjagala bakola ki? Abantu b'e Butambala bakola ki? Banfiirako. Ate temuli mwekka abantu mu Uganda kati bonna bagamba batufiirako. naye abantu b'ebutambala seeka gwe wali nange wajja wano kanneebaze baseeka bano bajja ne bansobera edduwa nga ndi omuzikiti guno gwajja ekitalya ne bambaga nti tuzze kukiitira mu kibi gw'ekibibi.
Ayagala gavumenti emuwa alipoota eyeetongodde ku ani yatta abantu 7 abaakubwa amasasi mu maka ge mu Gatonnya ow'omwaka guno.
So ngenda kubanja wano ilake basara lake bakyala mulimu abantu 2 bakyalina amasasi mu mubiri. Mbadde nyino nga ndi mukomera nga nyina okulabirira abantu abalwadde abakola beki okubajjanjaba bonna bawone nga nina n'okuyimirizaawo bannange mu makomera ne mwebala abantu b'ebutambala.
Kivumbi aweze okutandikira we yakoma okulaba ng'atuusa bannayuganda mu nsi empya.
Amaanyi mundeke nga teeke waggulu wali kitokote nga si kisaanikire. Kitokote nga si kiki bayinza okubanga okunzija mu palamenti kyekirabo kye basinza okuwa bannayuganda mala obudde obusinga obungi nga nteekateeka nga ntambula eggwanga lino nga nteeka enjiri ey'okuteekawo Uganda ki empya.
Ekedde ekibuga Kampala kyokka abadde atuuka empigi n'awambibwa abagambibwa okubeera ab'ebyokwerinda n'atwalibwa mu kifo ekitannategeerekeka.
And that, my friends, is the state of the nation. Dr. Stella, I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but you have seen the videos, you have seen the enthusiasm, both from the man who had just been given bail, but also from his constituencies. Right? The message is clear. We are not just going to keep quiet. We are coming for the big office. And once you mention that in Uganda, you know what happens. What are your thoughts, Dr. Stella, as we continue in this conversation of interrogating state versus power? I mean, state versus government.
So I suppose for me, the first response always when I watch Muwanga Kivumbi's his few minutes of speech just after he was released, I smile. Like I'm so joyous. Like the level of courage and total defiance, fearlessness. It's very refreshing, really refreshing. It's a breath of fresh air. Particularly considering the level of fear that's blanketing almost all of Uganda. And I am not going to join those who are condemning him for speaking as carelessly, as bluntly, as sharply, as critically as he did. I appreciate that he names our oppressors. He names them. Given Muhoozi Kainerugaba's abduction of critical thinkers and critical opposition leaders, many people no longer name the first family. But very clearly, Kivumbi names Anita Among, who was the face of corruption, really, although there are very many others who have been much more corrupt than she. Museveni, Janet Museveni, and Muhoozi Kainerugaba. And I think for me that that is becoming much more rare to find. The ability to be in Uganda and name the members of the first family who are entrenching family rule against the will of the Ugandan people. It's becoming rare with every abduction that happens. Yeah. And so that's my first sort of immediate response. I always smile, and I hear many people criticizing Muwanga Kivumbi and thinking, oh, he should have known how to speak. Like I said earlier, many have criticized his political party members in NUP for not cautioning him against what to say. But who knows? Maybe they in fact cautioned him. And I am among those who believe that prison especially going to prison as a political prisoner, has two effects. One, you'll be silenced and put in order. You'll be rehabilitated. That is the intention of the colonizer who created these colonial incarceration systems, that you go in there, you're beaten into submission, you become repentant, then you're rehabilitated into a governable citizen. Now, for many political prisoners, prison is also the space where one goes to rest, to think, to organize, to meet others, to refuel, to re-strategize, to rest, and to come out sharpened, right? And I think part of what I see with Miriam Matembe, the difference between Miriam Matembe's posture after she was at Luzira Women Prison and Muwanga Kivumbi after he was at Kitalia Maximini Prison is that he came out sharper. People who are saying he was not cautioned about what to speak, I think whether or not he was questioned, he said what had to be said. There was no stopping this man from saying, even if his wife Zahara had said to him, darling, don't speak for our sake, for the sake of the children. Prison did something to him that made him need to say what he said without fear, without shame, without biting the pain of naming who our oppressors are. And I want to say that and also reference what is going on in his political party, NUP, currently, where political prisoners who have been detained for a long time are undertaking plea bargains, having held out for months, others for years. Some of them have now yielded to this alternative to bargain with the state, admit crime they did not commit, and then get more lenient punishments and be released, including be released on bail or be released after dismissal of the charges. And I think that part of what we have to organize around is how to continue the resistance despite prison. And I think that Muwanga Kivumbi's courage has shown it's possible to go to prison, go away for a crime. So Muwanga Kivumbi, at the time of the elections in January, 10 people were murdered in his compound at his home. And instead of arresting and prosecuting the murderers of people who invaded Muwanga Kivumbi's home, Muwanga Kivumbi was taken away together with young people who are helping him with tallying the results from the DR forms for his election. So even the circumstances of his arrest, he's continued telling us, are very suspicious. His wife told us, people who are from his area, Butambala, told us. So the very circumstances of his arrest, his charging with treason, are questionable, similar to all the other political prisoners, because this is in fact a political case where the judicial system is being weaponized to punish resistance leaders and their young followers. So in terms of coming out of prison, Muwanga Kivumbi, very similar to Kizza Besigye and other political prisoners, and Erias Lukwago and Miriam Matembe, we know that they are political prisoners who are imprisoned not because they committed crime, but because they're putting up resistance and building people's abilities to believe that we the people can claim our power, take back our power. And having known that he was slapped with trumped-up charges, there's an anger around the injustice. Many political prisoners, when they come out, and I think the other component of why he would be angry and not allowed to be silenced is in terms of the injustice of the bail, that the bail conditions for his release included 10 million Ugandan shillings paid. Unlike all the other suspects with him, his co-accused suspects, 27 young people, were charged 1 million. And I think this 1 million shilling must have been raised by Muwanga Kivumbi and his family and friends, because the younger comrades who are charged with him cannot afford, their families cannot afford this sort of money. So 27 million plus 10 million, 37 million. But the injustice that he was charged 10 times more than the young people, yet they're all on the same file, could have been part of what fueled him to say what he said. And so in terms of responses, I think for me that very similar to Erias Lukwago, Muwanga Kivumbi represents the Baganda from central Uganda, the most populous ethnic group in Uganda. He represents the elite because I think he studied economics and finance. Lord Mayor studied law. Both of them have been part of SUWI and Uganda Young Democrats, UID, and then they went into different political parties, one ending up in NUP, one ending up currently in PFF. But both of them are part of the political opposition class, and they are also Muslims, another targeted minority group in Uganda, because the dominant religion has been Christianity, Pentecostal born-again Christianity within the Anglican Church. But I think that Muslims for a long time have been victims of state oppression. And so the combination of Islam, Buganda, elite, opposition, political party organizing, makes these two men, interestingly, targets who may offer a challenge to Muhoozi Kainerugaba should he come to contest as president in 2031 or whenever. And so I think part of what we see happening right now is a criminalization, penalization, and taking out of viable challengers. The leader of the NUP party, Bobi Wine, or Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu, had to flee from Uganda. He's in exile. The third political party was which one? So if it's FDC, it's so fragmented, it has FDC and PFF. The leader of PFF is Erias Lukwago, and the founding father is Kizza Besigye. So in terms of viable opposition, part of what we see framed through Muwanga Kivumbi and Erias Lukwago is a literal taking out of possible challengers from within Buganda. And Buganda for a long time has been an opposition stronghold area which has refused to support the NRM, Dictator Yoweri Museveni's political party, or to embrace, to a large extent, the PLU. That I think that the greatest organizing for resistance against the NRM leadership, against PLU and Muhoozi, resides in Buganda, right? So in terms of what's happening, I think for me, in terms of responses to the questions that you raised, is this idea of a pressure cooker, you know? I am a person who totally believes in free expression. At the time when I was being arrested and charged for offensive communication and cyber harassment against Yoweri Museveni and his family, Yoweri Museveni and his wife, Yoweri Museveni and his mother, Ugandans used to say, Stella Nyanzi is very vulgar. That woman, she says Museveni matako utako. And she says all these vulgar words. And in that moment, Ugandans seemed to think it was okay to silence a woman who was criticizing using foul language. Miriam Matembe was taken away without saying anything vulgar. Miriam Matembe doesn't say vagina in public. I do. I said pair of buttocks to the president. Okay. When they took away Timothy Kalyegira is among critical Ugandans who operate on social media who thinks my language is too much, right? Timothy Kalejira was abducted, okay, without being vulgar, by being just a Ugandan who criticizes and challenges and questions. Erias Lukwago, the most decent in terms of speech, Salongo. In Buganda, Salongos have prerogative to be as vulgar as I am. We have cultural permission as the parents of twins in Buganda. But Salongo Lukwago is a man of decorum, a man of the language. He's cultured. He's a Muganda, well brought up Muganda Muslim boy who grows up to become a father and a leader in his own right, as a leader of a political party, as a leader of his profession, as a leader of Lukwago and co-advocates. He's a leader in every way, right? He's also being taken away, like Stella Nyanzi was taken away. Muwanga Kivumbi, another decent Muganda Muslim, elite, educated. And I think for me that the pressure cooker theory is, so Stella Nyanzi perhaps belongs to the category of TikTokers who are all wiped out, foot soldiers who are major generals in insult. All of us were wiped out, right? And a few others, notable others. But what's happening now is a very specific form of targeting, where it's no longer vulgar, obscene language or insult. What has become equated to insult is challenge. We are coming for power. We are coming for power. And I think for me that therefore the perhaps the way we should reframe our thinking is to think about who is threatened by free speech and what sort of free speech. It's free speech that says we are coming for our power. You read to us the Constitution, power belongs to the people of Uganda. And you're saying, does it belong to the people of Uganda? The Constitution says power belongs to the people of Uganda. Now, part of what's happening is every time we try to touch those who grabbed our power away from us, whether it was through the botched elections of 2026 or the ones that came earlier, or it's through the militarization that has really taken away all power from our institutions, or it's through the immense corruption that renders Ugandans too poor to engage. Whatever it is that's taken the power away from us, when we try to resist and touch it, reclaim it, organize to take back our power, we become targets. So the insult against the current military coup in Uganda, the highest form of insult is to threaten them and say, we are coming to take back our power. The insult of the day is our claiming of our constitutional rights. How bizarre. How bizarre and unfortunate that by the people of Uganda rising up to say we are coming to organize to take our power, right? That statement is an insult that necessitates violent abduction and detention in ungazetted facilities. I think for me, when I say that the crisis is now dire, if it was a banana, it's now overly ripe. That is where we are, Henry. And the pressure cooker metaphor for me is, you're talking about anarchy, right? But I think for me that when the masses can't speak anymore, when we hold our rage in, when we hold our criticism in, when we hold in our pain, when we hold in our plans, because Erias Lukwago is planning to serve Muhoozi Kainerugaba when he's taken away. Muwanga Kivumbi is also planning to go and organize at the NUP headquarters when he's taken away. When our organizing becomes criminalized in ways that are violent, the pressure will mount and there'll be a bursting, right? And I think for me that my hope, my call then to the power holders, to the military organizers, the military coup managers, my call would be for them to allow Ugandans to vent. Otherwise, when the bursting happens, it will be uncontrolled, unmanaged, and then we shall have anarchy. Because no one will know the plans. There will be no coordination, but we can't keep in our anger forever. There's going to be a bursting. I would rather have an organized, coordinated, well-managed bursting of the masses than to have anarchy, because then the Ugandan state will deteriorate completely as the current government is taken over and replaced with a new regime, which we may not be certain about, the formation will not be certain about. If I were Muhoozi Kainerugaba, I would rather have challengers, opposition organizers who I know and can identify than to have vagrant, uncoordinated factions all over Uganda who are not speaking out but are organizing, because the organizing will happen. I know Ugandans, people have called us weak, planless, etc. But I know Ugandans. We can persist as an oppressed people for a while, but not forever. They will be organizing. And I think for me that previously we organized against military dictator Idi Amin, civilian dictator Milton Obote. We have been organizing, we shall organize, and we shall free ourselves. And so Muhoozi Teyeyibala, he shouldn't think he's going to beat us down forever. Ugandans are going to organize amidst the threats, amidst the violence, amidst the brutality, amidst the abductions. And what I keep saying is the abductions are just a precursor to the real unleashing of violence. One of the things I'm waiting for is an abduction basement encounter that will produce a dead body. The torture will be immense, that a dead body will come out of the abduction, come out of the torture, and there will not be a reckoning in a court or at the Uganda prison services. And in that moment, Ugandans will arise. If it doesn't happen with the next abduction, because there are going to be others, one of the people who are abducted could die. Could die. What happens if Kizza Besigye dies in detention? You talked about Kifefe. There have been very many others. Sejirinya died shortly after he was released. You know? There's so many other Ugandans who have died shortly after a stint as political prisoners in our prisons. What happens if Erias Lukwago dies before getting his medication, dies as he has prophesied he's going to die in prison? Let me die a painless death. What happens if Erias Lukwago dies either in prison or en route to his medication abroad, or even after his release? There will be a trigger that will unite all Ugandans, that will reunite us in our anger. They may think they're taking out our leaders, but there's going to be alternative modes of organizing. That is my 2 cents, because I know the sorts of rebellious organizers we are as Ugandans. And I would rather have a transparent society where people can speak out and we can identify who the leaders of the resistance are, than have blanket cover of fear where underground organizing happens off radar, because that will definitely yield anarchy.
It's very interesting that we are talking about anarchy. I think in this podcast, the word anarchy has appeared at least more than 5 times. But you're not the only ones talking about
it. It was your
anarchy.
word, Henry. I just picked up on your word.
It was my word, and I think I don't think I'm the only one thinking about Uganda proceeding to that state, the state of anarchy, because when we start encountering, when we start witnessing people only thinking about self-preservation, as opposed to speaking truth to power, as opposed to keeping our leaders accountable, as opposed to defending the constitution in a manner that other civil societies do, then we're not giving a choice but to think about the state of anarchy that could happen to our country. And unfortunately, I'm not the only one thinking about that, the country encountering that state. The brother-in-law of MK has intimated in a similar, has given similar sentiments of how the country can delve into anarchy. And I think I'm not even going to use to paraphrase his words. Let me use his own words in this.
I want you to know that freedom does not always beget freedom. It sometimes breeds anarchy and a resurgence of what is in the foundational DNA. There were also groups inside the movement in the last elections, dressed up in military uniforms, beating up people, invading polling stations in some of the constituencies, shooting and dispersing voters, and then openly doing ballot stuffing. Some of these scenes were extremely disturbing for me to watch. Other people lined up others and paid them to vote for them. No independent choice at all from citizens, some of the citizens in our area. This is what happens when we undermine or when we lack a central uniting idea and we
So these are words of the brother-in-law of MK and also the CDF. What he describes in his statements there is exactly what happened to Muwanga Kivumbi's constituents, or Muwanga Kivumbi as a person. As you said earlier, about 10 people were killed in his constituency, and later on he's being flamed and charged for being the one who orchestrated the killing. Yet we know that he was inside his house and he could not orchestrate it. He doesn't have guns. Muwanga doesn't have access to guns. The only people who have access to guns are the state and the deep state. Similar to what happened when he was re-abducted. The people who had access to those guns were the people in that van that had no number plate, had no license plate whatsoever. Those people are suspected to be part of the deep state, right? They're the ones who have access to guns. They're the ones who have access to drones or cars that have no license plates and can be allowed to drive around Kampala without being questioned by the police, even though the police was in the presence of that abduction and witnessed it. They could potentially be called to court to share their witness report regarding that abduction. So when we start describing the state of the country, of the nation as anarchic, we are not getting these out of the vacuum. We are actually citing what we have seen, referencing what we have seen happen in a society that is supposed to be an organized society. So I hope that we shall continue to interrogating these issues, obviously. But before I close, I want to hear your closing remarks to this podcast. Unfortunately, I've been unable to bring in Aaron and Egesa, even though they agreed that they would be part of the podcast. But of course, based on where they are right now, I cannot really determine if they are safe or not. It's very hard to determine if someone is safe to pursue a podcast of this nature, where we speak freely about what is really happening, without censorship of how to interrogate issues, so long as we are interrogating these issues at an intellectual level. So hopefully they are safe. They will be coming when they are ready to come. Perhaps not today, but another day when they are able to engage in these kinds of conversations. They will be coming. What we can promise you here is that we are not going to shut down. We shall continue to engage folks who are able to come and engage with us. We shall continue to invite folks who are able to come and share their thoughts about what is happening in the country, and encourage folks out there, those of you who follow our conversations. If you'd like to participate in this conversation, reach out to Dr. Stella or reach out directly to me, and we shall invite you to come and share some of these sentiments, because we want everyone to be involved in these conversations, not just the two of us or the four of us. We want as many voices to come out and share their thoughts on how Uganda should be governed, on how institutions in Uganda should be built and strengthened, and on how citizens should participate in ensuring their country grows like other countries around the world. Dr. Stella, as we wrap up, what are your final remarks before we close?
So I want to speak to that point and to say that the last 7 weeks we have been meeting, and one of the trends analysis from the last 7 weeks is how, in fact, Ugandans who are in the country are very fearful of coming to the space to speak freely. I remember Dr. Joel, who participated in an earlier space, who is a medical doctor, who was really talking about issues pertaining to young doctors, intern doctors, who will no longer get money from the Ugandan government. So he wasn't even coming to the space to talk about opposition politics, although he may belong to a political party. He came to talk about crisis within the medical profession. And I also want to remember that we had a comrade, the professor from Rwanda, who is now in Canada, who came to talk about questions of sovereignty when there were questions about Professor Lawrence. And, you know, I also remember sitting in a space with Aaron Kiza and sitting in spaces, many spaces with Comrade Ronald Egesa. And I remember how you advertised different people who were not able to show up because of fear. As we consider organizing and free speech and the ability of Ugandans to speak freely, I would like us to consider what it means if we all yield our voices and stop talking about Uganda in ways that are critical. If we all censor ourselves, the censorship that Miriam Matembe has been forced to embrace. You showed a small video where she's at the family court and she's asked, why didn't you come to speak? Or can you talk about what's happening in Uganda? And she immediately says, The idea that Ugandans become fearful about talking about the pain that's being in Uganda, what it means to be in Uganda today, and the fear of what will happen after one has spoken about those who are inflicting pain to us, I think should worry all of us who believe in free thought and who believe in free speech and freedom of expression, particularly if we are not in Uganda. Very soon it's going to become dangerous to just say the name Muhozi. Very soon it's going to be dangerous. Actually, I think it is already dangerous to say the name Janet Kataha Museveni. We're not supposed to comment about that name. We're not supposed to talk about that person or her absence from office, even when she was appointed, and then an acting minister of education was put in her place. And I think for me as a Ugandan in exile, I implore other Ugandans in exile, in diaspora, who are living outside the confines of Uganda, I implore them to use their voices. It doesn't have to be here on the Henry Sully State of the Nation that happens every Sunday. But what will it mean if we go back to the dark days where we only praise our oppressors, where people are too fearful to talk about the name Yoweri Museveni Kaguta? These are names that claim to have the will of the people, that claim they were appointed into office for 40 years legitimately. Why is speaking their names dangerous? And why must we allow ourselves to cower and give them what they want? I think that the last front for resistance for me will be speech and expression. And so especially for comrades in Uganda, I recognize the danger that you put yourselves when you speak on these platforms. And I want to celebrate all of them who speak out, even when they become targets. So I want to celebrate all the different Ugandans in the country who continue to speak freely. And despite the danger, our voices must not die out, because that's the last front. They've taken almost everything away from us. That's the last front of challenge is going to be through our voice. So on that note, I want to thank you, Henry, for organizing the space. And I send my love and courage to both Aaron Kiza and Ronald Egesa, who you advertised to be coming to the space today. I pray that wherever you are, you're safe, you keep strong, and you keep doing the work you must do, because we are the leaders we are waiting for. We are the resistance we are waiting for. We are the organizers we are waiting for. We are the prophets of our day that we are waiting for. And I think that speaking out is perhaps the only thing we can do. So Henry, thank you very much for your leadership in terms of organizing this space. I wish you safety as well and courage. The last thing maybe is to say that those of us who are in diaspora and in exile, people think it's an illusion to think we are safe. But when we begin seeing orders for deportation, abductions and rendition, is it extraterritorial? What's the word? Extraterritorial deportations. When that happens, then we know that they've taken out every resistance voice in the country, and they're now coming for us. I used to watch those films, KGB films, when USSR was organizing. But I think we should promise ourselves as Ugandans abroad, to Ugandans in diaspora, Ugandans outside the country, that we must continue holding fort, because voices are our last weapon really is our voices. So thank you for your leadership, Henry. Keep doing what you do. Keep organizing. As long as I'm alive, I'll be here. If they come for me, get someone to replace me. I will hold space whether any of the advertised speakers is here or not. I am not the most knowledgeable because my specialization is in sexualities. But whenever there's an opportunity to speak and speak about Uganda, I'll come and speak criticizing the regime that has impoverished Ugandans, the regime that is abducting Ugandans, the regime that has filled prisons with political prisoners, the regime that is now replacing dictator Yoweri Museveni with Muhoozi Kainerugaba. I will continue criticizing them until we are free or until I die. Have a good week, Henry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stella, for joining us here today, and for always sharing your time and resources, knowledge, and others. Teaching is not an easy thing, but it's a talent, and we always appreciate listening to you. Now, the way we engage might be questioned by different people, but I think it's important to have spaces where people can freely engage. I referenced earlier Socrates being convicted for corrupting the youth, but the reason why he was convicted was because he used to engage in these kinds of conversation. He used to engage in the assembly. This is the assembly that we have right now. We come, we engage, we interrogate questions interrogate us as well. We unpack how we think about certain things. We unlearn a few things. We learn new things as well. And I think it is important for us to engage civilly, in a civil way, regarding some of the events that happen in Uganda. It's a movie itself. Uganda is a movie. Every day is a different scene that we see. But I want to thank the people who follow us on a regular basis, the folks that watch us, those who send us private messages, those who are out there waiting to listen to Dr. Stella, waiting to listen to Egesa or Aaron or whoever is being advertised to come and share what is going on in Uganda. I think it's important. You're important because you want to know what's going on. You want to see how to engage, how to help. You may not want to help openly, but you're always available to share your ideas as well. So it's important to have these conversations. And as I said earlier, I encourage you to send us messages. If you would like to be part of these conversations, we shall definitely include you. We are an inclusive bunch, and we want to understand how different people think about the different issues that we face on a regular basis. So today's discussion was not really about Muwanga Kivumbi, or about Lukwago, or about Museveni, or Janet, or the individuals, really. It wasn't about a single government. I think it was more about the republic. How should the republic look like? How should a republic function, right? How should a state function? And how should the people, the citizens within that republic organize themselves or share their thoughts as they build a republic? Because governments are temporary, even though the state might be permanent, right? But even the state is not supreme, right? And in Uganda, Article 1 tells us that it says that power belongs to the people. And that's important. I think we need to always remind ourselves the same way we wake up every day and pray. Those of you who subscribe to praying, and the same way you wake up every day and pray, or brush your teeth, or do a daily cure that you know that this is a daily. We have to remind ourselves on a daily basis that power belongs to the people. And when you give up your speech, you're giving up your power. Governments are merely given exercises to given authority to exercise that authority, right? The judiciary, of course, interprets the law, and parliament makes it, right? Security agencies are supposed to enforce that law, not to create a law that is outside of the constitution and implement it. So the people who abduct us while they are putting on military attires, are those the people that are supposed to be protecting our sovereignty? Are those the people that should continue putting on those uniforms? Or should there be a different state of affairs on how to govern ourselves, right? Does power really belong to the people? And if we continue asking that question, you may think that that question is political, but it's not just political. It's not political. It's also economical. Because if you don't have the power to defend your business, you cannot thrive in an economy, right? You must have that power. You must have the power to advocate for your business, for better policies that govern how you do business, right? How you walk around, which radio you listen to, which TV you watch, which woman you want to marry, which boyfriend you want to marry, right? You do not give up that power. That power belongs to you. The challenge for Uganda Therefore, it's not merely to elect better governments, but it's to build stronger institutions, because it's those institutions that that guide how we govern ourselves, right? Because when citizens understand the difference between state and government, then they understand how they also fit in within those two entities. And I think this can only begin by asking better questions, right? Because it's the better questions that help us build better democracies. And I hope as we wrap up this today or tonight, wherever you are, depending on where you are, we are going to think critical about these questions and think critically about how you, as a Ugandan citizen, engage with the affairs of your country. Now, I have also just heard that, well, I heard this morning, I just didn't want to talk about it immediately, but Senator Lindsey Graham passed on. Most of you already know who Senator Lindsey Graham is. He's a Republican senator from North Carolina. He's a staunch ally for President Trump. He died at 71. We commiserate with his family and the American state for losing such a good senator in terms of policies and how he has managed his political life. This is not unique to Senator Graham. This will also happen to politicians in Uganda. So think about your legacy. How will you be remembered? How will you be remembered when you finally pass on? And with that, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Henry Sally. This is the State of the Nation. Happy Sunday and God bless you. Enjoy the World Cup. I hope whoever is you are supporting is going through and you're going to enjoy the semifinals and the final. Good luck with the next couple of plays that are happening. God bless you.
This is the State of the Nation. Irifa Muwanga. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The State of the Nation with Henry Sally.